You're 17 years old, and you just survived a horrible year in high school due to COVID. The summer is upon you, and you are pumped and stoked because you get to spend your nights gaming with your buddies and your daytime laying by the pool. You have a vision of a brand new, state-of-the-art Razer laptop. But you have a problem. Mom and Dad aren't giving you the money to buy it. So what do? You get a job at $11 an hour in a fast food restaurant in the middle of Central Texas. Day one, 0 training. Lots of hangry, frustrated, and impatient customers. As the summer progresses with only $250 left to save, you have grinded it out to get that laptop when an angry customer storms through the front door, throws her hamburger in your face, and declares that she's waited 45 minutes in the drive-thru and her burger is cold. That 17-year-old was my son. And what an interesting experience that he had to learn how to drive a better customer experience through a really challenging summer. It could have been prevented. We're going to talk today about how Teradata, AWS, and Brinker came together to drive better customer experience in the restaurant environment for their customers, leveraging not only the right data in the right ways with the right technology, but frankly, with a little bit of magic. First, let's talk about why Brinker chose Teradata and AWS. Teradata has been in business for 40 years, building a deep, robust system and solution to drive enterprise analytics to scale. We focus on the growth of our people through the certifications as well as the accreditations. We're jointly investing together with AWS on our technology to help our customers transform their business and deliver better business outcomes faster and more economically than our competition. It's proven, and it's proven because we are profitable. AWS and Teradata recently signed a strategic collaboration agreement. Many of our customers are thinking, okay, so what's that all about? What's in it for us? You may be wondering the same. First and foremost, it's all about taking any persona within the IT environment. So whether you're in DevOps or you're a data scientist, we're all about making it easier to migrate, but not just migrate, to build, manage, and innovate across multiple AWS services. Our industry cloud solutions are all about easy-to-use, repeatable reference architectures and recipes to help your business generate better outcomes faster that deliver the results that your top leadership expects you to deliver on a daily basis. We also are working together with AWS to invest in our customers. We understand and know that there's a cost to migrate to the cloud. Together, we're leaning in and investing in our customers by providing migration credits to reduce the cost and the burden of that expense. The data marketplace and data sharing opportunity is there for our customers. If you're running Teradata on AWS, we're working to make it an easier, faster experience to deliver to your customers for a curated experience around data sharing. And last, and pretty important, is the AWS Marketplace. Leveraging the AWS Marketplace, you can actually leverage your Teradata spend to burn down your EDP commit. We also provide flexibility around the billing solutions through the AWS Marketplace for our customers. But don't just take my word for it. Think about the fact that across 40 years, we've been engaging with the top companies across multiple industries around the globe. We've worked together with great companies like Brinker that you see here. We want to make sure that we're not just delivering the outcomes that Brinker expects, but that their customers expect and that they need to help them continue to modernize the experience and drive profitability for shareholders while also making sure that their customers never leave a restaurant hangry. Takes a little bit of magic, as I mentioned before. Today, we have with us Jay Vell and Mark Abramson. Jay is a senior solution architect, and Mark Abramson at AWS, and Mark Abramson is the manager of architecture at Brinker. They were a critical part of the team who worked together this magical solution to make sure that the customer experience is the right experience every time at a Brinker restaurant. They're going to share with you a little bit of what that magic entails, even though everyone knows that a good magician never shares all of his secrets. I'm going to start with Jay and let him begin to share with you the role that AWS played together with Teradata to make it a reality. Jay?
Thanks, Regina. That was awesome. I'm Jay Vell. I'm Solutions Architect here at Amazon. So today I'm going to talk about three important things. One, we're going to talk about how to get Teradata on AWS. Two, we're going to talk about that once you get the Teradata on AWS, how is the responsibility going to lie on? Basically, what is AWS responsible for, what is Teradata is responsible for, and what customers as you all responsible for. Finally, I'm also going to talk about some of the integrations, especially when you get Teradata on AWS. There are many other services we have from AWS side. How can you integrate all those services together? Let's dive in. As Regina mentioned, like we have Marketplace. That's the best place to get Teradata. Again, if you go to our Marketplace, you can search for Teradata SaaS, and you can find the first link up there, and then you should be able to just download there and put in your account and start to play with that. In fact, Teradata recommends SaaS as the preferred option. There is also another option called Do It Yourself, so you can search that also from our Marketplace and get there and put in your account and start to play with that. So before I move to the next slide, I want to see from the audience, how many of you are already using Teradata, or how many of you are planning to use Teradata? Can you raise your hands? Nice, that's awesome, cool. So as I mentioned earlier, like next thing is we're going to dive into the responsibility model, right? So this is, again, Teradata is going to be on AWS. So as AWS is hosting everything, so AWS is responsible for infrastructure, also the data center and hosting functions. But on the other hand, if you think about anything related to Teradata, such as imagine you're going to do the backup or restore, or you want to do some monitoring, any other functions, all these means is related to the Teradata SaaS platform, that's going to be responsible, Teradata is going to be responsible for that. But on the other hand, customer as you, if you're migrating some of your data for the first time, that first time or even ongoing migrations, that is something customer and Teradata can, as a combination, you can responsible for. Also, if you have some kind of like database operations or even administrative tasks, for those, customers and Teradata can work together and make that happen. And there are some additional services also available. So this eye-catching architecture diagram, again, I know there's so many components here, but I'm going to dive into the individual components so you'll get very easily. But this diagram is showing, like, you have a Teradata Vantage in the middle, but there are many other AWS services around it. How do you integrate AWS services with Teradata? Like as Regina mentioned, there are many verticals we have, Teradata is doing their business with. But now, first part is if you have the data, right, there are three things we do with data. First, you need to bring the data into the Teradata Vantage platform. That is ingestion pipeline. But then we need to do some processing, such as like some kind of ETL or something we need to do that. Then third part is we need to do some advanced analysis or visualization, like creating dashboards, those kind of things. So let's go through one by one. So 3 areas, we're going to dive into one by one. So on your right-hand side, you can see different data types or classifications. First is unstructured. So such as like images or text files, those kind, or text in general. So you can store this unstructured data into S3. I'm showing S3 like a bucket. Again, that could be your data lake. So you would put your unstructured data into your data lake. From there, you can connect to Teradata Vantage platform using NAS, Native Object Storage, or Teradata Parallel Transport, a TPT. So by that way, you can certainly bring that unstructured data into Teradata Vantage platform. The next step is, if you want to bring the semi-structured data, like what Bringers did. In fact, Mark is going to talk about that. From some sensor data, if you want to bring that in, you can bring that too, or some log streaming data. Now we are talking about some kind of streaming, right? So we have some services in AWS, such as Amazon MSK, Managed Kafka, or Amazon Kinesis Streams. You can use one of those services to bring the data through streams. But on the other hand, if you want to do some minor data processing on the way and write that into the Teradata Vantage platform, you can certainly use AWS Glue or AWS Lambda. So those are services like you can use in the middle. But then at the bottom, you can see some structured data, right? So like for an example, all the applications data or SaaS, especially the business applications, so SaaS applications, they produce this structured data. If you want to bring that data in, again, you can use AWS Glue, or you can certainly use Amazon AppFlow to write that into S3 bucket. Now you know the pattern. We are data in S3, so we can use NAS or TPT to connect the data, send the data to Teradata Vantage platform. So now we bring the data in. It could be for any vertical. You can bring any data inside Teradata Vantage platform. Now next step is processing. So there could be short-term processing and long-term processing. So let's think about the short-term processing. If you want to do something like that, we can certainly go to S3, connect to Athena, and do some specific queries, and you can do some simple processing there. But if you want to run some long-term processing, what you can do, you can certainly use Amazon EMR, Elastic MapReduce. So that will run very long-running processes. And to connect Amazon EMR with Teradata Vantage platform, we can certainly use our Teradata Query Grid. Again, that service itself can connect to many other sources. In this case, Teradata Vantage, and we are connecting with EMR and running some long-running processes and taking the output, writing back them into our Vantage platform, Teradata Vantage platform. So we did some processing now. What is next? Some analysis or visualization, right? Or MLA operations. In fact, I don't want to steal thunder from Mark, but he's going to talk some cool stories about some MLA workload that they did. But I'm going to talk at the very high level. So if you want to run some SageMaker models, especially Amazon SageMaker that we use for creating different models or AML models, if you want to do that, so you can certainly connect to Teradata Vantage platform through S3 or EMR. That's what you see on the top. But then, if you want to do some, if you want to use some high-level services such as Amazon Comprehend or Poly, those kind of services, you can certainly connect them using some Python libraries. That's what you're seeing there at the bottom or the middle section. And then if you want to do some visualization, we can use many of the visualization tools, but again, Amazon offer our Amazon QuickSight, and there's a direct connector from QuickSight. You should be able to connect to Teradata and do the visualization as well. And these are some of the integrations I talked about, and also you can see on your right-hand side additional integrations. And if you have any questions, please stop by and we'll happily answer any questions. And that said, I talked at the 30,000 foot level, giving you some architecture. Now, Mark is going to dive really deep and tell the customer story, how they use this platform to help their customers. That's it, Mark. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's the lunchtime, so I hope you're not too hungry right now, but I'm going to try to keep it exciting. And we're here in Vegas, and so we're going to talk a little bit about magic as well. We have a magical experience, and I love that Regina actually introduced us with magic in mind, because I have background in magic. So I want you to take a look at this slide that you see on the screen, the AWS integration. That's going to be something important that we talk about throughout my whole presentation. And because I'm going to give you a little background about how I'm a magician, as I said, I love the idea about magic, I have a tendency to show a little bit of magic while I'm presenting. So even though it's like Halloween, there's no treats, but there might be some tricks. You might say that I have magic in my jeans. Well, I guess I'm wearing pants, so I have magic in my pants. Wait, that didn't come out quite right. I actually have magic in my pocket. So is a magician? No, really I do. So just to make sure your mind's in the right place, a deck of cards, I'm a magician. So anyhow, when we talk about the Brinker experience, we're actually benefiting because we've been on AWS for a while with other systems. And I was so excited to learn that some of my teammates and my peers are here at the show. I'm kind of excited. You guys didn't see me yesterday, did you? Hopefully not. Actually had a really great time. Hopefully everyone did as well. But really at Brinker, it's really a new era. Think of Brinker as a restaurant company, but as an innovator. And so I'm going to talk about that innovation, which we call a new era of value creation at Brinker International. So let's talk a little bit about the agenda and what we're going to look at. I'm going to introduce you to Brinker if you're not familiar with us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've done with Teradata and AWS as a partnership. I'm going to give you a summary of where we were in our journey getting to the cloud. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the scalability of Teradata. And I'm going to talk about the price predictability of what you get when you go to the Teradata solution. So let's jump right into it. And let's talk about the magic of the solution. First of all, you might want to hear a little bit more about me. I am, or maybe not, I'm actually a BI and analytics architect and development manager, and I actually led the effort to go from on-prem and into the cloud. And you might think that's a big effort. It really is quite a big effort, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that effort. One thing the reason why it's so big, if you think about it, Brinker is a large casual dining organization. Any of you eat at a Chili's restaurant? Any of you eat at Maggiano's? Those are our brands. So we have 1,600 restaurants globally. We're in 31 countries. We serve 1 million guests every day. That's a pretty big number. And we're going to talk about that as well when we talk about some of our guest survey data. By the way, we really care what you think about us as a company and as your guest experience. And we have about 100,000 team members worldwide. So let's talk about the on-prem to into the cloud. And by the way, I have a lot of slides that talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence, but there's one slide that I'm going to get to that really talks about what the overall solution was from on-prem and into the cloud. But you know, when you think about Teradata from the beginning, Teradata is a good solution. You know, people think of it as a lot of hardware and software. So we always thought it was good. We were on it for about 15 years. But when you're doing something that you think is good, but you want to make it great, that's going from good to great. So we're going to talk about going to great. And the greatness that we see now in the cloud is what we talk about, the magic of Teradata and the performance we get in AWS. Now, I have to be truthful with you. Initially, we didn't have the best experience on-prem. And it really wasn't Teradata's fault. Again, we're about burgers, fajitas, fries, and Maggiano's Italian classics. Marketing's going to love that I pitched that. But the thing is that you actually can't be on a really old version. You actually have to make sure you update your version. So the truth is, we were on a version 13 of Teradata, which probably not many people are, our own fault. But Teradata convinced us wisely that we should go into the cloud and experience the cloud performance. And we did what we call a like-for-like upgrade. And we love a like-for-like. Just think about this. In your bank account, if they say they're going to give you a like-for-like, and it's a $100 bill, and it becomes $1,000 with interest, that's kind of what we got when we moved into the cloud. We actually had like-for-like, but we had more processing, we had more power, we actually had more memory in the cloud. So we talk about going from making the big small. Well, the idea is that moving your data, when you have terabytes of data on one platform to another, that's a big effort. Making sure that it looks like a small task is a really trick in itself. When I presented to the CIO that we were actually going to migrate to Teradata in the cloud, I also said, you know, while we're doing that, why don't we do our ETL, or data movement tool, which was Informatica, no commercial for Informatica. And so we were on a 9.6, we were going to 10.2, and he said, Mark, you sure you want to do that? You're going to go with your ETL tool and your database? That's good. And I said, yeah, we can do it. He said, okay, then I have one throat to choke. That would be me if something goes wrong. But with the partnership of Teradata and the fact that we were already on AWS and had some experience, it was quite successful. But the idea that made it a much smaller task, where it could have been much larger, was that we actually had everything lined up for our single sign-on. We had everything lined up for the ability for security. And what you see in my list here is an edge server. That's where, when I tell you about our full story, there's a slide coming up where we actually were really comfortable on our Teradata platform, and then we decided to take it up a level and to use some technology. We have deep analytics, and we use the edge server, which actually connects directly to AWS and Teradata. So let's go ahead directly to that slide. This is a really powerful slide. This is our final solution. You know, we were drinking the Kool-Aid for a lot of other vendors, but we had already invested 15 years into Teradata, and we knew that it was a solution that we actually wanted to keep. So this is a perfect time for me to use my visual aid of magic, which that way I'm going to keep you entertained and myself as well. So if you think about it, we started off with a vendor that talks about all the cloud capability. And sometimes people think of Teradata as the big iron. Well, now they're actually the big cloud. So we came full circle to what we actually were when we started off with one of the other vendors. We realized we could do a lift and shift with Teradata, and then we could be on the solution with all of our stored procedures, with all of our database objects. And if you look at this diagram right here, it shows you how we use our reporting tools, which are Tableau, Web Focus, and Teradata. And then we actually have Essbase as well. And you can see that it's very easy to be on the cloud. You have single sign-on capability. So like I said, we tried another vendor. We created a data mart, and we realized that we needed to have an enterprise solution. That's where I say we came full circle. And when you're looking at something full circle, you want to think to yourself, maybe you should think outside the box. So you change from outside the box, and then next thing you know, you're thinking about, what about the other solution providers? You should always consider the other solution providers and make sure that that's not a warning to get off something that's really good. So when we talk about something that's a warning, you know what this looks like? That's a warning sign. You make sure that you'd have a little exclamation in there, that you actually have a warning. Don't go to vendors that tell you they can do something that maybe they can't. So in our final solution, what you would see is that we actually tried another provider, and they talked about giving you this type of performance where you can actually scale up. Well, if you look at Teradata in the cloud today, they're as good, if not better, than any other vendor out there when it talks about scalability. So we had about 50 terabytes worth of data. So we're not the largest data set in the world, but it's a good size for a restaurant company. And we were able to do, through Teradata's planning, an MPark, what's called MPark conversion. And we took the data from on-prem straight up into the cloud, and we kind of gauge it to be like maybe 48 hours, but actually with all the testing and all the sizing, it was like 36 hours. So we actually could have been up and given our customers the system back, but we decided to make sure that all the reporting was in place. So that's the picture. 36 hours, maybe 48 with touching a little bit of the reporting, a little bit of the analytics, and voila, like magic, we're on Teradata in the cloud. We had more processing engines. You know, PE are the processing engines technically on Teradata. And we had more memory already in the cloud. And now we can start thinking about something more important like deep learning, machine learning, and analytics. So thinking about that, look at my next slide. Teradata has built-in analytics. They call it VAL, the Vantage Analytics Library. So if you think of things like a sigmoid model, or you think of things like random forest, anybody familiar with machine learning, those things you can apply on the Teradata database, which really, a long time ago, you'd have to go out and hire data scientists to get all that done. And by the way, we do have some data scientists, and some of the folks in our digital team work some of that data as well. So now that you know that we're comfortable with Teradata, and we can leverage Teradata's technology and Brinker's need for data, analytics, and machine learning, let's dig a little bit deeper. When we look at the Vantage Analytics Library, we can look at patterns of what's going on in the restaurant industry. You know, unfortunately, the world we live in, we actually had a pandemic. I guess we're still in the pandemic. And we had a big dining presence, but we had to shift rather quickly from a dining environment to a delivery and to go. So having this type of analytics and the ability to do that is a huge bonus, and be able to use Amazon and some of the features. Remember I said, look at Jay's slide, the AWS and integrations. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more as I get to the end of the presentation when you look at what's available. You'd be surprised how analytical a company that has burgers, fajitas, fries, and Italian classics actually are. We actually did some testing with weather data, and this is great for a conference like this. We have people from all over the world. So if you look at this map right here, our mobility data, we realized that if we took the data from Teradata, we actually have a lot of storage capability in AWS with the S3 buckets, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what Jay started talking about, which is the NOS, the Network Native Object Store. And the Native Object Store allows you to put different types of data. Regina kind of talked about that. So if you have unstructured data and you want to store that in the S3 bucket or the Native Object Store, that's something you can do. And if we want to take weather data and want to merge it to our to-go and delivery data, or you want to merge it with any of your check data or analytic data, you can. We actually did a test with this weather data from NOAA, and we saw, when do people go to Chili's or Maggiano's in the various regions? We found out that the people in the Northeast, so if you're in the Northeast, raise your hand and you can give yourself a round of applause. All right. They're the most hardiest. It could be 85 degrees out or 100 degrees out in the summer, or it could be 32 degrees. They're still going to go to the restaurants. What we found out, though, in our corporate office, which is in Coppell, Texas, that we're actually the most sensitive. If it's not like 75 degrees, we're not going to go to the restaurant. But the people that are in the Northeast, they'll go whenever. So that's kind of what this slide is. We want to see with the NOAA data and using the machine learning and the deep analytics, what we actually can see. So keeping the machine learning and analytics in mind, this is a really powerful slide. This is going to tee you up for what we created, which was a simulation and kind of an avatar. Think about when you go to a delivery or to-go station of a restaurant. You have a station just like this, where we have all these tools and these packaging things that we put together, put your food on there, and then we walk them over to a place where we put it down so you can come pick it up if it's to go, or the delivery folks at maybe DoorDash can actually deliver it. So we actually, in the RSC, created a simulation as to what they would do in the restaurant when they put them on the shelves and what it looked like. So that's what I'm walking you through. And we used Amazon's technology, we obviously used Teradata's technology, and we used the machine learning and the analytics and some of the models that some of the brilliant scientists at our company use. So that's what you're seeing right here, and SageMaker is one of the tools that we actually use to create the avatar. Now, unfortunately, you can't see the video, but if you can, some of you who might like videos, hopefully a lot of you do if you're here at the conference, but that's a picture on the screen that you're seeing of, like it shows the vehicle. So if you come to curbside and we actually take the food out to you, we want to make sure that the food is hot, that your order is correct, and all the content and items are in your order. So that's what we're doing. We took the motion that people were making, we took all the packaging together, and we created this video in this avatar, and I'll talk about the POC that we did at the very end. So we're going to tie all that together. So we actually also look at check data. So that's where Teradata comes into play big time. We have billions of rows of data on check data. So anytime you're in a restaurant and you pay your check, and one thing that's very important also is, and our DGE team is really into that, is survey data. When you come to our restaurant, we want to make sure that you have the best time and the best experience possible. So we have like 9 million rows of data every day that look at the survey. If you tell us our food is great, or you tell us that it's hot, or you say it's not, or that we have an issue, we look at it. We want to understand what you're doing in our restaurant and what we're doing to make sure that your experience is pleasurable. We also take that data from the surveys, from the actual avatar that we make, and we simulate different models to get this advanced learning. So this next slide is kind of like under the covers. Like as a magician, you want to show some of the magic, but you don't want to give away the secret. And I love that Regina said that. That's the motto of a magician, never give away the secret. But actually the secret sauce for us as a company is to have these simulation models and to look at the analytics. If you look at this next slide, it kind of highlights what Jay said. We have some other databases. Our enterprise data is on Teradata, but as a company, we have other systems out there. We have SQL Server, we have Hadoop. But if you want to merge all that together and those different data types, non-structured or unstructured data, you might want to use Teradata's native object store. And you know that Amazon has the elastic storage that you can put out there. So we kind of leverage that, and that's where our partnership with both of the organizations comes into play. In the next slides that I'm going to show you are kind of walking you through some of the detailed technology that we use with SageMaker. I'm not sure if you're familiar with SageMaker Studio. If you're not, you might want to do that. It actually has a lot of capability where you can actually build those avatar solutions and look at the deep learning, the analytics, and some of the video analytics as well. The next slide that I'm going to show you was kind of what we actually used as a model for a program that we called Vision. And Vision, just like its name, is our vision of using deep learning analytics and taking some of what we have in the restaurant and that delivery and to-go station and making sure that it's all pulled together. And talking about pulling it all together, you can't actually pull data together or sensitive data when it's like certain types of analytics without having a governance program in place. So I have to plug the idea is with Teradata, now that we can breathe easy because it's working as it should be, 100% utilization when it needs to, and when it's not 100% utilization, you can focus on your data and make sure that it's governed properly. And then the next thing is when you have that governance in place, you can start digging into the analytics and you can see things that maybe you actually never saw before. Like I said, sometimes I like to kind of demonstrate things with a little magical effect. When you look at your data, sometimes you think you're looking at one particular thing. Like sometimes we talked about, from a circle to a square and to a warning sign. Well, when you're thinking about what you're looking at, sometimes you can't fit that square into the right place. And when you think that you see one type of analytic and you start investigating that data, it may turn into something else. And so the idea is you got to keep your eye on the analytics, or keep your eye on the square, or maybe it's not exactly what you thought. Maybe it's not quite a square. Maybe it's something else, like maybe another object. So the idea is that when we have the ability to share the platform with the vendors that we have, we can do things that we've never done before. Hopefully some of you tried one of our virtual brands. Because of the pandemic, Brinker is a fast-moving company, and we had to think outside the box, and we had to think from not just within the square of our restaurant, but outside the square of our restaurant into a virtual environment. So now we have some virtual brands. So definitely, if you haven't tried it, try our virtual brand, which is called It's Just Wings. And I learned recently, I thought that was our idea completely. I thought we should patent it. But if you look at some of the restaurant systems and some of the other individuals, like I love the Food Network. Anybody watch the Food Network? Yeah, so I love to watch Guy Fieri in his little sports car, and he goes around. He gets to eat all the time. That's like a great job, right? So I learned that he actually has like a ghost kitchen. I didn't know that. And so the idea is a lot of restaurant companies are using ghost kitchens and virtual brands. So when we start to do that, we need more machine learning and analytics to predict what restaurants in what regions of the country are we going to put our virtual brands and make sure that we have that same experience that they get today at the Chili's or Maggiano's. And how do you do that? You do that with simulations. 3D simulations, some machine learning, some artificial intelligence, and a little bit of fries, and a little bit of burgers. So, and maybe if you like Italian food, Maggiano's Italian Classics. Hopefully marketing will get that I'm pitching all that. So going back to the machine learning and analytics, if you've noticed some of the screens I've provided, it talks about SageMaker and the technology that AWS has and the ability to use that technology to really get those business insights to make sure that you actually have the data, the analytics, and the answers that you need from your data. So now that you've kind of learned about our journey, where we were on a journey to do a bake-off, and then we came full circle with Teradata, realizing we had such an investment in its state-of-the-art technology in the cloud. I'm going to give you a wrap-up of what we have. So this next slide is our BI architecture. You can see that those two circles with the chili peppers in the middle is the RC. That's where we do all of our good thinking, and we have our data scientists, and that's our support center, our restaurant support center. And then, but the foundation, the heart of our business is our restaurants. We have high volume restaurants, we have medium volume restaurants, we have all types of restaurants. And if you look at the architecture slide, it shows how we stream data to those restaurants and we communicate back and forth. The lifeblood of our organization is obviously the restaurants. And then we use some of the tools like Tableau, WebFocus, and we use, as I said, visualizations and simulations. And part of what we're doing today is, this is kind of like top secret, but I'm sure none of you will share it outside this room, but we actually have robots in the restaurants. So, you know, again, think of a restaurant company, we're pretty high tech. We're trying to simulate, you know, everybody, if you've seen in the news that there's a shortage of workers, right? So we're trying to look at ways to help make a better experience in the restaurant with some of our robots. And how do we make sure that we take some of that data and some of the data from our checks, some of the simulations with machine learning, and you come up with this entire POC where we actually take the analytics, and there's a lot on this slide. Take a minute to, some of you with photographic memories, to kind of snap it. But think about this. We have Teradata, which everything is peaceful and easy. When we need to run data, our SLAs are running. We actually have 100% utilization from 11 to 2 when our restaurants are busy and getting prepared, and from the dinner hour from 5 to 7. And then when Teradata is not being hammered by all of our operators in the restaurant, it kind of scales back down. And you know, I didn't mention one important thing. Some of the other vendors out there tell you how their systems scale up just by snapping your fingers, kind of like magic. There's no magic here except for the magician there. Is that what happens is you have to drop the workload and then start it again. And some of the other vendors will tell you that you actually go out there and you snap your fingers and it happens in midstream. It's actually an illusion. But the way it really works is, think about a weightlifter. If you're going to lift 500 pounds from the floor, you're going to throw it up and you're going to put it over your head. But you got to put it all the way down. Well, every vendor has to do that. But just like any other vendor, it can be done in a certain way. And Teradata does it. You know, when we first copied our 50 terabytes of data and moved it from on-prem into the cloud, we actually did the NPAR conversion, and we scaled up the CPU and the memory, and it took about 7 minutes, maybe 10, and I got some coffee in between. So think about that. If you had to scale up before, it might have been a big effort with other vendors. So Teradata has state-of-the-art technology that on AWS that allows you to do that today. And part of that technology now we're leveraging with the Edge device that allows us to stream any type of data, machine learning data, any type of deep analytics. And if you look at the number 2 section, we have some archive data that we pull in from the restaurants, and we stream that in to the final Teradata solution. And now if you go to our restaurants, you probably see that we have handheld devices to try to make your experience a lot better. If you have curbside or you have pickup, we're going to use our IoT device, which Teradata supports, and so does AWS. And then finally, we take all that together and we provide a dashboard, KPIs, and analytics to give business insights. And that's our solution. Teradata, AWS, and Brinker, a partnership that brings the best service and makes the most important thing that our main founder, Norman Brinker, said, that nothing is more sacred other than the guest's returns. Thank you for your attention.